Somewhere on YouTube right now, there is a video claiming that Spain is hiding a secret letter written by Princess Leonor. It has thumbnails with red arrows and question marks. It has a dramatic voice promising a hidden surprise. It has thousands of views. And it is built on absolutely nothing. There is no leaked letter. There is no palace cover-up. There is no secret document sitting in a drawer in Zarzuela Palace waiting to be exposed. But here is what is actually true, and what makes this story so much more interesting than the fake one. There really is a secret letter connected to the Spanish royal family. It is real, it has been published in full, and its contents change the entire trajectory of the monarchy that Leonor is set to inherit. The letter just was not written by Leonor. It was written by her grandfather. And understanding why that distinction matters, and why an entire ecosystem of AI-generated content has grown up around inventing fake letters for a real princess, tells you almost everything you need to know about the gap between what people want to believe about Leonor and what is actually happening in her life. So let's separate the two stories properly, because both of them are worth telling, and only one of them is fiction. Start with the fake version, because it is worth understanding how it is built. Over the past year, a wave of channels have published videos with titles like, Prince Christian's Secret Love Letter to Princess Leonor, or, The Hidden Surprise Inside Leonor's Letter. These videos follow a formula. They open with a real, verifiable detail about Leonor's life, usually something from an actual public appearance or a real royal event. Then they pivot into a narrated scene, often illustrated with AI-generated images, describing a letter, a secret meeting, or a private confession that has no source, no citation, and no basis in reporting from Spanish outlets, royal correspondence, or the Zarzuela Palace press office. There is no byline. There is no publication behind the claim. There is just a voice telling you a story as if it were true, timed to appear in searches from people who are genuinely curious about Leonor's future. This is not journalism, and it is not really gossip in the traditional tabloid sense either, because tabloids at least source their claims to someone, even anonymously. This is closer to fan fiction wearing the costume of a news report, produced at scale, optimized for the exact kind of search queries that curious royal watchers type into YouTube. And the reason it works is that it is answering a real question with a fake answer. People are genuinely curious about who Leonor might marry, what her private life looks like, whether she has a partner. That curiosity is legitimate. The problem is that almost nothing about her personal romantic life has been confirmed publicly, and into that vacuum, a manufacturing industry of speculative content has rushed in, dressed up as revelation. So if there is no secret letter from Leonor, what is the real letter that actually shaped her family's story? It was written by her grandfather, King Juan Carlos I, on August 3, 2020. And unlike anything you'll find in the fake videos, you can read this one yourself, because the royal household published it in full. Juan Carlos had abdicated back in 2014, handing the throne to his son Felipe after nearly 4 decades as king. But by the summer of 2020, his reputation was collapsing under a series of financial scandals, including allegations that he had received tens of millions of euros in undisclosed payments connected to a high-speed rail contract in Saudi Arabia, with funds allegedly routed through Swiss accounts. Spanish and Swiss prosecutors had opened investigations. The pressure on Felipe to distance the crown from his father's conduct had been building for months. As early as March of 2020, Felipe had already taken the extraordinary step of publicly renouncing any personal inheritance from his father and cutting off his father's royal allowance, a signal that the institution was trying to draw a hard line between the king and the king emeritus. Then, in August, Juan Carlos wrote to his son. The letter opened formally, "Your Majesty, dear Felipe," and went on to say that, guided by the same desire to serve Spain that had defined his reign, and in the face of the public fallout from certain events in his private life, he wished to express his complete willingness to help make it easier for Felipe to carry out his duties with the calm that his responsibilities required. He wrote that his legacy, and his own personal dignity, demanded it of him. He described the decision as one made, with deep emotion but great serenity, and confirmed he would be leaving Spain for an undisclosed location, later reported to be Abu Dhabi. Philippe's reply, also made public, was carefully diplomatic. He acknowledged his father's decision with what the royal household described as respect and gratitude, and he affirmed the historical importance of his father's reign as a legacy of service to Spain and to democracy, while also stressing that this legacy existed within the framework of the Constitution and the rule of law. Read that phrase again, because it is doing enormous work. Felipe was thanking his father publicly while simultaneously reminding the entire country that no one, not even a former king, stands above Spanish law. This is the real secret letter of the Spanish monarchy, not because its contents were hidden, but because of what it represented once it became public: an admission, in writing, that the founding king of Spain's modern democracy could no longer safely remain in the country he had helped build. Juan Carlos was the man widely credited with steering Spain out of the Franco dictatorship and into a constitutional democracy in the late 1970s. And here he was, more than 4 decades later, writing to his son to explain why he was leaving. This is the actual institutional weight sitting behind Leonor's future reign. She is not just inheriting a crown. She is inheriting an institution that had to publicly manage the exile of its own founding figure in living memory, and she has grown up watching her father spend years trying to rebuild public trust that her grandfather's conduct had damaged. That is one honest way to think about hidden letters in this family's history, but there is a second one, and it is more structural than personal. It has to do with the actual paperwork, decrees, and constitutional language that quietly determine what Leonor can and cannot do with her own life, none of which gets the dramatic thumbnail treatment because it is not scandalous, it is procedural, and procedural things do not go viral. But they are arguably more consequential than any secret letter could ever be. Article 57 of the Spanish Constitution lays out the rules of royal succession, and one clause in particular, Article 57.4, states plainly that anyone in the line of succession who marries against the express prohibition of the king and the Cortes Generales, Spain's parliament, will be excluded from succession, along with their descendants. This is not folklore. This is written law. It means that Leonor's marriage, whenever and to whomever it happens, is not simply a private romantic decision the way it would be for any other 20-year-old. It is a constitutional event that requires either implicit or explicit institutional approval. When Felipe married Letizia in 2004, it set a modern precedent. A commoner, a divorced former journalist, formally accepted into the succession line without incident. That precedent matters enormously for how flexible or rigid Leonor's own eventual choice is likely to be treated. But the underlying legal mechanism, the one nobody frames as a secret because it is published in the Constitution for anyone to read, gives the Spanish state formal power over who the future queen is allowed to marry. If you wanted to write a genuinely dramatic headline about hidden control over Leonor's romantic life, Article 57.4 would be a far more accurate subject than any invented letter, because this is real, it is legally binding, and it has already shaped royal succession in Spain's neighboring monarchies in ways that caused real institutional crises. There is a second piece of quiet paperwork worth knowing about, and it explains why Leonor has spent the better part of the last several years in military uniforms rather than at university full-time. Royal Decree 173 of 2023 formally structured her training rotation across all 3 branches of the Spanish Armed Forces, the Army, the Navy, and the Air and Space Force, an unusually rigorous and lengthy commitment compared to what her father underwent at a similar age. This culminated in July 2026, when she completed her training in San Javier, Murcia, marking the close of that 3-branch rotation, with her sister Infanta Sofia by her side to mark the occasion. This was not a symbolic gesture or a single ceremonial posting. It was a legally structured, multi-year program written into a royal decree, designed to give Spain's future head of state direct command experience across every branch of the military before she takes on any civilian constitutional role. Compare that to the emotional register of a fake secret letter video, and you can see the difference between manufactured drama and the real, unglamorous machinery of how a modern constitutional monarchy actually prepares its heir. One is designed to make you click. The other is designed to make sure a future monarch is constitutionally and practically ready to represent the Spanish state, including as the ceremonial commander tied to its armed forces. So where does that leave Leonor now, heading into the back half of 2026? The real, verifiable picture is this. She has just completed the military phase of her preparation and is expected to begin at Carlos III University in Madrid, continuing the academic training that runs parallel to her constitutional duties. She has been carrying out an increasingly full calendar of public engagements, including standing beside her parents and her sister for Spain's World Cup celebrations this summer, where in one widely covered moment she jokingly asked footballer Ferran Torres whether he was still planning to shave his head after a pre-tournament promise, a small, human, unscripted moment that Spanish outlets picked up precisely because it showed her at ease rather than performing a role. She has taken on more formal responsibilities tied to the Princess of Asturias and Princess of Girona foundations, the philanthropic and cultural institutions tied to her title. And she continues to navigate an unusually public adolescence and young adulthood under the weight of a constitution that will eventually ask her to formalize, in writing, decisions about marriage and succession that most 20-year-olds get to make privately. Meanwhile, public opinion about the monarchy she is set to inherit remains genuinely divided. A widely cited study from the University of Murcia found Spanish public sentiment split nearly down the middle, with 51.5% favoring a republic against 48.5% favoring the continuation of the monarchy, numbers close enough to be described as a coin flip on the institution's long-term legitimacy. That is not a footnote. That is arguably the central tension of Leonor's entire future. She is being trained, decree by decree, foundation appearance by foundation appearance, military branch by military branch, to inherit an institution whose public support is genuinely contested, in a country still processing what her grandfather's exile letter revealed about how fragile that institution's credibility can be. None of that needs an invented letter to be compelling. If anything, manufactured content like the fake secret letter videos does something close to the opposite of what it claims. It pulls attention away from the actual, documented story, the constitutional mechanics, the real exile letter, the military decree, the genuinely split public opinion, and replaces it with a version of Leonor that exists only as a character in someone else's fictional plot. She becomes less of a real young woman navigating an extraordinary set of institutional constraints, and more of a blank canvas for whatever romantic narrative generates the most clicks. The irony is that the true version of her story doesn't need embellishment. A 20-year-old training across 3 branches of the military, bound by a constitutional clause that gives the state a say in her marriage, inheriting a throne shadowed by her own grandfather's very real and very public letter of exile, navigating public opinion that is split almost exactly down the middle on whether her future job should even exist. That is already a remarkable story. It just happens to be true, which means, unlike the fake letter, you don't have to take anyone's word for it. Every piece of it is a matter of public record, published constitutional text, an official royal decree, and a letter you can go read for yourself. To be clear about where the line sits in everything you just heard, the Juan Carlos exile letter, its contents, and the timeline around it are drawn from the royal household's own published statement and multiple contemporaneous news accounts. Article 57.4 of the Spanish Constitution and Royal Decree 173 of 2023 are matters of published law. Leonor's completion of her military training in San Javier this July, her upcoming enrollment at Carlos III University, her role at the 2 royal foundations, and her appearance at the World Cup celebrations are all publicly documented and reported by Spanish and international outlets. The University of Murcia study and its exact figures are drawn from that published research. What is not documented anywhere, by any credible outlet, is any secret letter written by Leonor herself, or any hidden romantic revelation the palace is suppressing. That part of the story, wherever you encounter it, is invention, and it's worth staying skeptical of any channel that presents it otherwise.